I hadn't even taken off my coat when the sound reached me, my sister's voice carrying through the Navarro dining room like she was already on stage. And before my brilliant sister shares her economic insights, let me warm up the crowd with a few words about our family's charitable legacy, Sienna declared, her hand lifted in a graceful arc as if conjuring an invisible audience. My portfolio slid from my arm. Months of carefully collated reports, charts, and projections fanned out across the polished mahogany floor with a sound like a sudden storm. Neither Sienna nor our mother flinched. They were too absorbed in their rehearsal. "Perfect tone, darling," Celeste crooned from her seat, her pearls catching the chandelier light. Not too formal, just the right balance of warmth and authority. They hadn't even noticed me. The very dinner they had billed as a celebration of my keynote invitation to the International Aid Foundation Gala had become a stage rehearsal for Sienna. The irony was bitter enough to sting. When Celeste finally spotted me standing in the doorway, her smile faltered for a breath before snapping back into place. "Lila, you're early." Sienna turned, feigning surprise, then arranging her expression into something softer, almost pitying. "Oh, don't look so startled. You know you'll freeze up there without help." The words punched harder than they should have. A memory unspooled, sharp and humiliating. I was 12 at the Christmas recital, fingers trembling above piano keys I'd practiced for weeks. Then Mum had announced to the crowd, "Sienna will join on violin. They always perform better together." The solo I had bled for became a duet I hadn't chosen. The pattern was older than I cared to admit. When I'd earned a scholarship, the dinner turned into applause for Sienna's student council victory. When I got into graduate school, the spotlight shifted to her engagement party. My father always framed it neatly. Lila has the brains, Sienna has the charm. Together they make a whole. Only, the world never seemed to need my half unless hers was there too. I knelt to gather my papers, my hands trembling as they scraped together spreadsheets and funding models that had taken months to perfect. But beneath the familiar knot of disappointment, something new flickered, hot, steady, dangerous. "This is my invitation," I said, rising to my full height, my voice steadier than I expected. "The organisers asked for me, alone." Celeste's smile tightened into something lacquered and false. She exchanged a glance with Sienna before rising smoothly to set the table. "Don't be selfish, dear. Sienna only wants to help." "You've always been so nervous on stage." "It's not selfish to want credit for my own work," I countered, clutching the papers to my chest like armour. "I've spent months with a speaking coach. I don't need anyone to warm up the crowd for me." Sienna let out a tinkling laugh as she reached for a wine glass. "Remember that conference last year? You whispered your findings so quietly the back row couldn't hear. This is a global gala, Lila. Donors need confidence." The front door opened then, and our father breezed in, shaking off the winter cold, a champagne bottle in hand. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was brutal. Ready to celebrate our keynote speaker?" Celeste pounced. "We were just discussing format. Sienna has graciously offered to introduce Lila at the gala." "Excellent idea," Harold said without hesitation, already reaching for the bar cart. "Takes the pressure off." And in that moment, standing opposite the three of them, I saw the divide laid bare, them on one side, presenting a united front, me on the other, holding scraps of paper that represented years of study and sacrifice. If I yielded, I'd give up another piece of myself to their narrative. If I resisted, I'd fracture the fragile illusion of family harmony. But harmony was never really mine, was it? I squared my shoulders, the words tasting like iron in my mouth. "No introductions. This is my presentation. Mine alone." The air in the room shifted, brittle as glass. For once, I didn't care if it shattered. The next morning, my inbox detonated. Subject line after subject line glared back at me like proof of a crime. To International Aid Foundation. From Sienna Navarro. My pulse throbbed in my temples as I clicked. Dear Miss Coe, it read, while my sister is certainly qualified in economic theory, she has a history of stage fright. I'd be delighted to support her at the gala if she grows nervous or runs short on material. Our parents believe this arrangement would benefit everyone. Beneath it, my parents' replies sat like co-conspirators. Excellent idea. Lila's ideas shine brightest when Sienna provides social polish. We're so proud both our girls will represent us. The room tilted. My fingers gripped the desk to steady myself, but another email popped into view. Months old. Sent to the Economic Policy Institute. My sister has been invited to present, but I'd like to discuss how I might contribute to her research panel. Another to my university alumni board. As Lila's closest collaborator, I can ensure her findings are communicated effectively. It wasn't just interference, it was a campaign. A carefully woven digital trail of sabotage dressed up as support. By mid-morning, the fallout had arrived. Director Whitaker summoned me to his office, his face stiff with professional concern. Lila, he began, fingers steepled. Your mother called this morning. The air seemed to thin. She called here? He nodded. Suggested that your sister might represent the family at future events. She said it would make things smoother. Optics, donors, you understand. His voice dipped lower. The foundation requested you specifically for your research. We can't have family lobbying muddying institutional credibility. My cheeks burned. This isn't a family affair. My work is peer-reviewed policy research. Sienna isn't even in this field. Whitaker's eyes softened with something between pity and unease. I believe you, but perceptions matter. Keep this clean, Lila. No more complications. As if sabotage could be brushed off like spilled coffee. By lunchtime, the office whispers had sharpened. Sienna's latest Instagram post bloomed across my feed. Her beaming in a designer boutique, captioned, shopping for the perfect gown to support my brilliant but shy sister at her big charity event. Proud family moment. Your sister seems thrilled about introducing you, Karen from accounting chirped as I poured coffee in the break room. Is public speaking not your thing? I forced a brittle smile. Actually, I'm the keynote, alone. Her brows rose, doubt flickering. Oh, I just assumed, well, that's what sisters do, right? Help each other out. The words curdled in my stomach. Help? That was the narrative Sienna had crafted, and the world was swallowing it whole. I fled to my office, shut the door, and dialed the one person who might cut through the noise. Felix, it's Lila. I need your brain. Felix Hart, colleague and occasional crisis whisperer, listened as I spilled everything. The emails, the Instagram post, the parental lobbying. When I finally stopped, breath ragged, he spoke with clinical precision. First, breathe. Second, understand this. Events like the International Aid Gala run on contracts, liability waivers, and insurance policies. Unauthorized substitutions aren't just insulting, they're breaches of compliance. If Sienna tries to insert herself, the foundation risks donor lawsuits if she says something unsanctioned. My pulse slowed. So, there are rules that protect me? Rules and optics, Felix confirmed. Request credentialed stage access, coloured wristbands, security lists. Put it in writing. Once it's official, she can't bulldoze her way in without breaking the law, or at least the insurance policy. For the first time all day, oxygen reached my lungs. I drafted the email to Miriam Coe, the Foundation's Programme Director, hands steady. Dear Ms. Coe, in the interest of maintaining programme integrity, I'd like to confirm that only authorised speakers will have access to the stage. Could we implement a credentialing system? Perhaps wristbands or security checks? Her reply came within the hour, Of course, Dr. Navarro. We value clarity. I'll escalate to our chair, Dame Priya Chaudhary. You'll receive confirmation shortly. Relief washed over me, tempered with dread. Because if I knew my sister, she wouldn't stop here. That night, when I returned to my apartment, the lock turned too easily. Inside, the scent of Sienna's perfume hung in the air. My bedroom door was ajar. My presentation lay scattered across the bed, slides reshuffled, graphs marked with Sienna's looping handwriting. I highlighted the parts you should emphasize, her note read, and added some transitions to make it more audience-friendly. You're welcome. At the corner of my eye, a faint tear in the seam of the dress I'd hung for the gala. Deliberate, precise, right where the stage lights would catch it. My jaw locked. Enough. Tomorrow, I'd change the locks, secure digital backups, and set two-factor authentication on every file. She wanted to edit me out of my own life, but this time, I wasn't going to let her. By Sunday, the air at Navarro House felt heavy enough to slice. Celeste had summoned us for final preparations, her phrase laced with the kind of ceremony usually reserved for royal weddings. When I arrived, Sienna was already standing in the living room, twirling in front of the gilt mirror like a debutante. Emerald silk hugged her frame, its neckline designed to catch every camera flash. Perfect for stage lights, Celeste murmured approvingly as she fussed with the hem. You two will look magnificent walking out together. I froze in the doorway. Walking out together? Celeste turned, smoothing her pearls as though my objection were a minor wrinkle. Yes, darling. Coordinated arrival, coordinated photo ops. We've already arranged the press line. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could swallow it. This isn't a fashion show. It's a professional event. My event. I will not be paraded as half of a matched set. The room chilled instantly. Harold rustled his newspaper with a sigh. Lila, so you've always been a team. Why change now? Donors love family unity. Donors love substance, I snapped the words sharper than intended, and I will not dilute years of research just to prop up a narrative that I can't stand alone. For a beat, silence. Then Aunt Rosie's voice, low but firm, cut through. It's the same as when Celeste and I were girls, she said, setting down her teacup with deliberate force. She always had to be the centre, and I was the background character. Lila, if you don't break the cycle now, you'll never escape it. Rosie's words struck like a bell. A tremor ran through me, not of fear but recognition. She had lived this pattern before, and she was telling me the cost of silence. That night, back in my apartment, I opened my inbox to find the lifeline Felix had promised. A draft, formal and surgically polite, addressed to the Foundation. To whom it may concern, it read, Please note that Dr. Navarro's materials, slides and remarks constitute intellectual property belonging solely to her. Any attempt by uncredentialed individuals to represent, alter or deliver said content would constitute misrepresentation and expose the event to compliance and liability risks. We trust you will ensure stage access is restricted to credentialed speakers, as previously confirmed. No threats, no dramatics, just cold, professional boundaries. Exactly what my family never respected. Miriam's response arrived within hours. Confirmed. Green wristbands will be issued to authorised presenters only. Security will be briefed. Chairwoman Chaudhary has endorsed this protocol personally. Relief flickered through me, chased quickly by dread. Because if Sienna had wormed her way this far, emails, Instagram, even tampering with my clothes, she wouldn't stop at rules. And sure enough, the very next evening, a courier envelope slid under my apartment door. Inside, an updated run-of-show sheet, Foundation letterhead printed across the top. There it was, in black and white. Keynote speaker, Dr. Lila Navarro. Introduction, Ms. Sienna Navarro. My stomach clenched. It looked official, too polished to dismiss. But a closer scan revealed small irregularities. The font one size off, the logo slightly pixelated. A forgery. I forwarded it to Miriam with shaking hands. Her reply came swiftly. We've traced the document to an unverified Gmail account. Spoofed. Our legal team is aware. Thank you for flagging it. I sat back in my chair, the forged program trembling in my grip. The escalation was no longer subtle. My own sister had graduated from opportunistic interference to outright fraud. For years, I'd told myself yielding was easier, smoother dinners, quieter holidays. But as I stared at the counterfeit schedule, something hardened inside me. This wasn't just about one speech anymore. This was about ownership of my work, my life, my voice, and I was done letting them edit me out of it. The night of the gala, the city skyline glittered like 1,000 watchful eyes as my car pulled up to the International Aid Foundation's glass facade. For the first time in years, I wasn't arriving as half of a pair. I stepped out alone, portfolio clutched like a shield, heart steady with something fiercer than nerves. Dr. Navarro, Miriam Coe greeted me at the entrance, her sensible heels clicking across the marble. She slipped a band around my wrist, bright green, embossed with the foundation crest. Stage access only for credentialed presenters. You're protected. The word settled over me like armor. Inside, donors in sequined gowns and tailored tuxedos mingled under chandeliers. The air shimmered with clinking glasses, polite laughter, and the scent of roses arranged in crystal vases. I should have been intimidated. Instead, I felt oddly calm. That calm shattered minutes later when a commotion rippled near the security checkpoint. This must be a mistake, Sienna's voice rang out, sharp enough to cut through the music. She stood in a midnight blue gown, glittering under the lights, her smile a perfect mask of exasperated innocence. I'm part of the program. My family arranged it. The guard remained unmoved, pointing to my wristband. Green access only, ma'am. If you're not listed, you can't cross. Sienna tried to step forward anyway. I'm her sister. I'm introducing her. From across the room, donors paused mid-sip. Whispers slithered through the crowd. Harold attempted to intervene, gesturing with his program like a man flagging down a waiter. Celeste's voice carried too far as she confided to a couple beside her. It's family tradition, both daughters presenting. But the guard's face stayed firm. Not on the official program. Heat crawled up my neck as I watched. A mixture of humiliation and relief. Humiliation that it had come to this. Relief that the system I'd fought for was holding. Dr. Navarro? Dame Priya Chuderi's voice reached me, smooth and commanding. She stepped to the podium, her sari gleaming gold in the stage light. Our keynote speaker this evening has been invited for her expertise, not her surname. Please welcome Dr. Lila Navarro. The applause rose like a wave. And I walked into it. For the first time in my life, no one walked ahead of me. No one shared my spotlight. At the podium, the lights washed over me, warm and steady. My notes waited, but I barely needed them. Good evening, I began, voice clear. Tonight, I will share research on sustainable economic development in marginalized communities. The graphs projected behind me, months of painstaking analysis, told a story of resource allocation, of communities rebuilt by agency rather than dependency. I wove policy into human stories. A village in Honduras where conditional cash transfers had doubled school attendance. A district in Kenya where transparent budgeting cut corruption by 40%. Every word I had once doubted rolled out with unexpected ease. Pens scratched across notepads. Donors leaned forward. The CEO of Global Resources whispered urgently to the UNDP delegate beside him. At one point, Sienna clapped early, her smile stretched too wide. That's exactly what our family always... Excuse me, Dame Priya interjected smoothly from the front row, her tone velvet but firm. "I'd like to hear the rest of Dr. Navarro's analysis." Sienna froze, silenced by the weight of authority she couldn't charm her way past. And suddenly, the years of being overshadowed crystallized into this one moment. Me, standing in the light, my work commanding the room. Not as an accessory, not as half of a duo, but as myself. When I closed with the line I had practiced 100 times, "Dignity is the foundation upon which sustainable futures must be built," the ballroom erupted. Applause thundered. The MC's voice nearly cracked with excitement as she announced record-breaking pledges. Hands reached for me before I even stepped off stage. Business cards extended, offers whispered. The World Bank, the UN Development Programme, international NGOs whose logos I had admired since grad school. Across the room, my family sat in uncharacteristic silence. Celeste's smile trembled. Harold stared at his untouched champagne, and Sienna, for once, looked stunned. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to check their faces for approval. I didn't need it. The spotlight was finally mine. 6 months later, the applause still echoed, not in my ears, but in the doors that had opened since that night. I stood at the front of a grand conference room in Geneva, the crest of the International Economic Summit, displayed on the screen behind me. Rows of delegates filled the hall, translation headsets snug on their ears. This time, I didn't need a microphone to steady me. My voice carried on its own. "As our data confirms," I explained, gesturing toward a chart, "sustainable growth doesn't arise from trickle-down charity. It emerges when communities hold the reins, when accountability mechanisms are embedded at the local level." A hand shot up from the back. Ambassador Thornton, notorious for his skepticism. "But, Dr. Navarro, doesn't that data conflict with the OECD's findings on fiscal leakage?" Once, his tone would have sent me spiraling. Now, I stepped away from the podium, walked closer to his table, and answered directly. "That discrepancy highlights methodology, Ambassador. OECD measured gross flows. Our analysis isolates net outcomes after anti-leakage audits. The distinction is why our pilot programs saw measurable improvements." The room leaned in. Even Thornton's lips twitched into reluctant approval. No one introduced me. No one added a "she's brilliant but shy." My work, my words, stood alone. And the summit's daily bulletin would later summarize it in bold. Navarro framework gains momentum. Back home, family dinner felt like a different kind of stage. Same silverware gleaming, same chandelier, but something had shifted in the air. Harold carved his steak with exaggerated calm. "So, Stockholm next month," he said. "Will you be presenting alone or on a panel?" "Solo presentation, followed by a round table," I replied evenly, my fork steady. Sienna, beside him, set her glass down. "You know, I've been reading about audience engagement strategies. I could help you with—" "No," I interrupted, my tone calm but final. "I've got it covered." The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It wasn't even awkward. It was something new. Respect, however reluctant. They didn't argue. They didn't press. For once, my boundaries stood without needing defense. Later that week, Aunt Rosie invited me to her garden apartment. She had arranged a small gathering, intimate but jubilant. Felix arrived balancing an elaborate charcuterie board. Miriam brought champagne chilled in her handbag-sized cooler. "To finding your voice," Rosie toasted, raising her glass as the sunset painted the walls in amber. "And to those who actually listen." Laughter bubbled, light and unforced. When the toast ended, Rosie pressed a small wrapped box into my hands. Inside was a photograph. Me at the gala podium, mid-gesture, my slides glowing behind me. The audience's faces were turned toward me, rapt. The silver frame bore an engraving, "Your Spotlight." I ran my fingers over the words, my throat tight. For once, I wasn't crying from humiliation or rage. I was crying because someone had seen me clearly and honoured it. The next morning in my office, a new invitation waited on my desk. The World Economic Forum requesting me to deliver a keynote on sustainable growth models. My calendar, once blank to accommodate family obligations, was now a vibrant tapestry of engagements, consultations, and panels. When my phone buzzed with Celeste's name, I hesitated. This time, she wasn't calling to arrange photo ops or to lobby for Sienna. She simply asked, tentatively, "Could we attend your presentation at the local business forum next month?" As guests, of course. The words hung in the air, startling in their humility. For the first time, my mother was asking permission instead of assuming authority. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the framed photo on my desk, the proof of a moment I had claimed as mine, and wondered, could respect coexist with forgiveness? Or did it require distance to survive? The weeks blurred into a rush of flights, panels, and interviews, but one question lingered louder than any applause. Should I let them back in? The local business forum arrived on a crisp autumn morning, sunlight catching the banners outside the civic hall. Before leaving my apartment, I slid 2 items into my bag: the silver-framed photo Rosie had given me, and a freshly printed card I drafted the night before. Simple, direct, uncompromising. At the registration desk, I left instructions: reserved seats for Mr. and Mrs. Navarro. Audience only. No backstage access, no media comments. For the first time in my life, I set terms. When I stepped on stage an hour later, the crowd was already buzzing with anticipation. From the podium, I spotted them, Celeste and Harold, seated dutifully in the 3rd row. No cameras in their hands, no whispers to neighbours, no attempts to rise. Just attendees, like everyone else. Sienna was there too. She didn't dress for the spotlight this time. Her posture was stiff, her smile faint, as if she wasn't sure how to exist without a stage. Yet she clapped when others clapped, and for the first time she stayed in her seat. Economic systems, I began, are fragile when they reward proximity over merit. Real sustainability comes when every contributor's work is recognised for its value, not overshadowed by who speaks loudest. The words rang louder than any statistic I projected behind me, because they weren't just policy, they were my life in distilled form. When the applause broke at the end, I caught my mother's eyes. For once, she wasn't smiling her polished, practiced smile. Her expression was softer, rawer. After the crowd dispersed, she approached slowly, almost cautiously. "I thought I was helping," she murmured, voice low. "All those years, I didn't realise I was silencing you." I swallowed hard. I needed space to be seen, not shared. Seen. Celeste's lips trembled, and for once she didn't reach for a rebuttal. She simply nodded, a gesture small, yet seismic. That evening, back in my apartment, I hung the silver-framed photo on the wall above my desk. Beside it, I placed an empty frame. Not for Sienna, not for anyone. Just blank space. A reminder that some parts of my life needed to remain mine alone, untouched. The applause from the forum still echoed faintly in my ears, but it was the silence of that empty frame that gave me peace, because for the first time, I wasn't waiting to be introduced. I was living in my own light, finally, and fully.